Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, coming to you live from Manila and coming to you live from Thailand. Here is Crystal Mapa. Hello, Crystal.
Hi, Alma, and to all our viewers. Yes, I'm Crystal Mapa, live from Thailand, and we're bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana dismissed claims that his recent statements on the Chinese incursions in the West Philippine Sea are not aligned with those of President Duterte.
Thousands of anti-coup protesters marched in Myanmar Sunday, calling for a free revolution with the country in its fourth month under a military regime.
Myanmar's deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi completed a third month under military-ordered house arrest on Saturday, a period marked by scattered gun criminal charges and apparent isolation from the chaos engulfing the country.
Very impressive. Prior to the pandemic,
after supporting the Philippine government's program to fight COVID-19, the Asian Development Bank will focus its financing program in the country to accelerate job generation.
The Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana dismissed claims that his recent statements on the Chinese incursions in the West Philippine Sea are not aligned with those of President Duterte. In a statement to reporters on Sunday, he said the chief executive's orders to the Defense Department regarding the WPS have been very firm and straightforward, and that is to defend the country's possessions without going to war. And as part of the Philippines' long-standing and multifaceted relationship with China, he said both nations maintain cooperation in various areas that are mutually beneficial to the Filipino and Chinese people. He said we can be cordial and cooperative with other nations, but not at the expense of our sovereignty and sovereign rights, he added. While mindful of China's far more superior military capabilities, Lorenzana said this knowledge does not deter them from defending national interests and dignity as a people with all available resources or assets. Earlier, Lorenzana said China has no legal basis to prevent the Philippines from conducting maritime exercises in the West Philippine Sea. And this came following China's calls to stop the ongoing maritime exercises of the Philippine Coast Guard and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, noting that such actions are complicating the situation and escalating the disputes. He added that Beijing's historical claims on the West Philippine Sea have no basis. UNCLOS, he said, gave the Philippines sovereign rights to explore the natural resources of an area that is 200 nautical miles away from the mainland.
In related news, the Philippines has protested what it said were a belligerent actions of the Chinese Coast Guard against the Philippine Coast Guard and their illegal presence in Bajo de Masinloc. The Department of Foreign Affairs announced the development in a statement on Monday, May 3, days after the incident from April 24 to 25. According to the DFA, the Chinese Coast Guard was responsible for shadowing, blocking dangerous maneuver, and for conducting radio challenges, while Philippine Coast Guard vessels were conducting legitimate maritime patrols and training exercises. The department said the Philippines conduct of maritime patrols and training exercises in the Kalayaan group of islands and Bajo de Masinloc in the first place is a legitimate and routine act of a sovereign country in its territory and territorial waters and is part of the Philippines' administrative responsibility. The Kalayaan group of islands and Bajo de Masinloc, after all it said, are integral parts of the Philippines that has sovereignty and jurisdiction over them. China has no law enforcement rights in these areas, the department said, rejecting the statement of the spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry that China enjoys sovereignty over Bajo de Masinloc. The department said such a statement is without basis in international law, including the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and is not recognized by the international community. This is not the first time the Philippines filed a protest against China over the presence of its vessels in the West Philippine Sea. Earlier, the Philippines filed a series of protests in connection with the presence of around 160 Chinese vessels in Julian Felipe Reef.
Thousands of anti-coup protesters marched in Myanmar, calling for a spring revolution with the country in its fourth month under a military regime. Cities, rural areas, remote mountainous regions, and even rebel-controlled border territories have been in uproar since the military ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi in a February 1 coup. The junta has aimed to suppress dissent through a brutal crackdown involving mass arrests and an escalating death toll. Demonstrations kicked off early in commercial hub Yangon as activists called for a show of force and a spring revolution. Youths gathered on a street corner before marching swiftly down the streets in a flash mob, dispersing soon after to avoid clashing with authorities. In eastern Shan State, youths carried a banner that read, "We cannot be ruled at all." Local media reported that security forces were chasing protesters down and arresting them. Bomb blasts were also went off across different parts of Yangon on Sunday. Explosions have been happening with increasing frequency in the former capital, and authorities have blamed them on instigators. So far, security forces have killed 759 civilians, according to local monitoring group, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. The junta, which has labeled the AAPP an unlawful organization, says 258 protesters have been killed, along with 17 policemen and 7 soldiers. Violence also erupted again on Sunday in Shan State's Sipao Township when security forces opened fire on protesters, killing at least 1. Meanwhile, in northern Kachin State, security forces also fired on protesters, even flinging grenades into the crowd. A 33-year-old man was shot in the head, a fellow demonstrator told AFP, adding that many others wounded in the attack were treated in a hidden area. Urban centers have become hotspots for unrest, especially in Yangon, where residents share videos of security forces beating up civilians on the streets. State-run newspaper Mirror Daily reported that a woman accused of supporting an underground parallel government opposing the junta was sentenced by military tribunal to 7 years in prison with hard labor. As the junta throttles communications and information, local journalists have also been targeted, and newsrooms have reacted by sending their staff into hiding.
Hundreds of Myanmar nationals living in Taiwan demonstrated against the current military regime in their home country, holding placards and voicing their support for a national unity government. Let's watch this.
我们的人民都要支持，我们人民都不要放弃，一定要成功，这一次一定要拜到政府要倒闭。
我觉得必须要为下一代着想吧，因为下一代他们的未来的是要自由跟民主嘛。我觉得不能说一直都是这样子过下去，因为我觉得每一个国家都在进步，我们国家是退步是我觉得不容许的一件事情。
我是一个香港人，然后我过来这边的原因是因为想要对缅甸现在受迫害的抗争者做一个支持，这样子。对，因为我们在去前年香港也是经历过同样的事情，所以我很明白他们的感受。
Hundreds of Myanmar nationals living in Taiwan demonstrated against the current military regime in their home country, holding placards and voicing their support for a national unity government. According to the Nikkei News, Taiwan's national legislature has passed a motion urging the Myanmar junta to restore democracy and halt its violence against demonstrators opposing the coup. Supported by the ruling party and passed by a large majority last April, the resolution signals a policy shift that sets Taiwan further apart from such countries as China, Thailand, and Vietnam, all of which have taken a softer approach toward the Myanmar military. While having no formal diplomatic ties, Taiwan is among the biggest investors in Myanmar. However, the resolution made no mention of possible economic sanctions against the Myanmar regime. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen and her government had previously been reluctant to explicitly condemn Myanmar's coup, but the resolution was backed by the ruling Democratic Progressive Party as well as the main opposition Kuomintang. In mid-March, Taiwan's de facto embassy in Myanmar advised Taiwanese companies operating in the country to fly the island's flag and hand signs stating they are from Taiwan to avoid being confused with China, following attacks and burning of Chinese finance factories in Yangon's Lang Karyar industrial area.
Myanmar's deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi completed a third month under military-ordered house arrest on Saturday, a period marked by scattergun criminal charges and apparent isolation from the chaos engulfing the country. The nation has been plunged into violence since the military deposed the Nobel laureate in a February 1 coup, ending Myanmar's brief tryst with democracy. The resumption of junta rule sparked a wave of protests and a brutal crackdown on the pro-democracy movement, in which security forces have killed more than 750 people, according to a local monitoring group. Charged on 6 counts, including sedition and under Myanmar's official secrets law, Suu Kyi has been denied private meetings with her lawyers. Instead, she has had only a couple of video meetings that were physically monitored by security officials at both ends, according to her defense team. Min Min So, another member of the defense team, said on Monday that Suu Kyi is cut off from information about the ongoing unrest at the house, where she is being detained in the capital, Naypyidaw. Suu Kyi spent more than 15 years under house arrest during previous military rule before her 2010 release and rise to power in elections held 5 years later.
To Malaysia now, where all AstraZeneca vaccination slots taken up in 3.5 hours after registration. We have Alfred Balmes of EBC Malaysia Bureau for the report. Hi, Alfred.
Hi, Crystal. Good afternoon. When it was first announced on April 28 that all 268,800 AstraZeneca vaccine doses received by the Malaysian government would not be used in the mainstream national COVID-19 immunization program following public concern about the vaccine, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Khairi Hamaluddin, said AstraZeneca vaccine will instead be given through dedicated vaccination center in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor on a first-come, first-served voluntary basis. The AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine registration kicked off at noon on Sunday, May 2. In about 3.5 hours after the registration announcement was made, Minister Khairi Hamaluddin tweeted that all 268,800 slots at 4 vaccination centers in Klang Valley had been taken up. However, he said the public could still put themselves on the waiting list. He apologized for the initial glitches in the first few minutes after registrations were opened. Khairi also mentioned he will expand the opportunity to those living in other states to opt in for it and ensure those without internet access can also sign up. Sarawak State, however, has declined the offer. Malaysia is expected to get 1 million more doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine this month via the COVID-19 Vaccine Global Access Facility. The coordinating minister assured that the public that the AstraZeneca vaccine had been proven to be safe and effective, with only 4 incidents of blood clotting reported out of 1 million people globally. Back to you, Crystal.
Thank you for that update, Alfred. You stay safe and healthy as always.
Thank you. Reporting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Alfred Bralmes. We live in interesting times.
And from Malaysia, we now go through to Thailand, where Thai households are now set for COVID testing. Here's Gretchen Kusadsad joining us live. Hello, Gretchen.
Hello, good afternoon. Here in Bangkok, health authorities have shifted their focus on the infections in households as the number of new cases among family members continues to rise at an alarming rate. The spokesman of the CCSA also said that the concern is that the disease is no longer out there, but instead has already come into households, especially ones in Bangkok. He said that the fluctuation in the number of new cases are not satisfactory and point to the need to adopt more stringent control measures. While the vast majority of deaths with a median age of 73 are contracted the virus from their families. The 5 provinces with the highest number of new infections are Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Chonburi, Samut Prakan, as well as Nonthaburi. Meanwhile, during the meeting of CCSA on Saturday, the Department of Disease Control set a goal of bringing daily new cases in the capital to under 400, or 8 cases in each district, as the city steps up measure to control the spread. The City Hall also now plans to kick off a new run of active case finding testing by 1,800 people in target districts today, followed by 400 on Tuesday, 2,000 on Wednesday, 1,600 on Thursday, and another 1,400 on Friday. As new cases reported in Bangkok, the surrounding provinces accounted for up to 44.2% of all new infections last month. And the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha as well wants to focus this area as much as possible. As of May 3 of this year, the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, or the CCSA, has recorded a total number of 2,041 new COVID-19 infections with 31 new deaths, bringing the total infections to 70,425. Back to you, Alma.
Gretchen Kusadsad reporting from Thailand. Thank you very much for your update.
Thank you very much. This is Gretchen Kusadsad reporting from Bangkok, Thailand. We live in interesting times.
All right, and now we go back to the crisis in Myanmar. A prominent rebel group in eastern part of the country appealed to other ethnic armies to unite against the military as the country enters its 4th month under a junta regime. As security forces have deployed deadly violence against civilians to suppress a persistent anti-junta movement, some of Myanmar's myriad ethnic armies have spoken out against the military. Among the most prominent opponents is the Karen National Union, which has admitted offering shelter to fleeing dissidents in the territory they control along Myanmar's eastern border. Clashes have escalated in Karen State between the KNU's fighters and the military. Last week, the rebels attacked and razed a military base. The junta retaliated with airstrikes and rocket launchers aimed at rebel-held territory. On Sunday, after 5 days of air raids, the Vice Chief of Staff for the KNU's armed wing wrote an open letter calling for all ethnic Karen fighters to unite regardless of their loyalties. His letter was addressed to 2 other rebel groups in Karen State, the Democratic Karen Buddhist Army and the KNU-KNLA Peace Council, a group formed by a former KNU commander. Both have remained mum since the coup. State-run media last week reported that their officials had met with the junta in separate meetings to discuss peace processes. Bao Kiao-hei also called for unity among ethnic Karen fighters in the Border Guards Forces, a subdivision of Myanmar's military made up of former ethnic insurgents. Myanmar has more than 20 ethnic rebel groups, and many of them hold territories in the country's border regions.
Indonesia said it will salvage a submarine that sank off the coast of Bali as grieving relatives paid their respects to the dozens of crew killed in the disaster. On Friday, victims' families cast flower petals from a Navy ship into waters where the sub went down as part of a remembrance ceremony. Many wept and hugged as one could be heard saying, "Bye-bye, Daddy," while a couple of relatives collapsed as they were overcome with grief. Authorities had yet to confirm if they would try to haul up the Kri Nanggala 402 from the seafloor after it was spotted cracked in 3 pieces. The Navy on Friday said it was waiting on the arrival of 2 ships, including a vessel sent by China that are equipped to handle deep-sea salvage operations. High-powered magnets and air balloons were among the possible options, but how and when the cracked submarine would be brought to the surface was uncertain, said Navy Chief Hudo Margono. The submarine's 53-strong crew are believed to still be inside the vessel, Margono said. An underwater rescue vehicle supplied by neighboring Singapore gave visual confirmation that the German-built sub was lying on the seafloor more than 800 meters or 2,600 feet deep. The eerie images were final confirmation that there was no hope of finding survivors. The submarine, one of 5 in Indonesia's fleet, disappeared last while taking training exercises. The crew asked for permission to dive. It lost contact shortly after. The Navy has said that the submarine may have suffered a blackout and left the crew unable to perform emergency measures. They said its hull would have been torn apart as it sank to depths far below what the Kri Nanggala was built to withstand.
In other news, senior officials of the United States and the Philippine governments conducted on April 29 the final high-level dialogue to mark accomplishments and outline next steps after the conclusion of the 4-year U.S.-Philippines Child Protection Compact, or CPC, partnership. The dialogue centered on recognizing the progress made over the last 4 years towards achieving the CPC partnership's objectives of improving the government's capacity to investigate and prosecute cases of online sexual exploitation of children, identify and respond to child labor trafficking, provide comprehensive services to protect child trafficking victims, and prevent future human trafficking crimes. During the meeting, Philippine officials led by Department of Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara and civil society leaders committed to carry forward and build on the accomplishments achieved under the partnership and reaffirmed their commitment to combat all forms of child trafficking. U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, Chargé d'Affaires John Law said their strong partnership with the Philippine government and civil society organizations has built a solid foundation reflected in various efforts aimed at eliminating all forms of exploitation against children. The partnership signed by the 2 governments in 2017 concluded on April 11. Its jointly developed and implemented plan strengthened the capacity of the Philippine government and civil society to address OSEC and child labor trafficking, specifically improving their ability to prosecute and convict child traffickers, provide comprehensive trauma-informed care for victims, and prevent these crimes from occurring.
Volcano Discovery website reported that an earthquake of magnitude 5.4 occurred only 10 minutes ago, 150 kilometers southwest of Padang, Indonesia. Indonesia's Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysical Agency reported that the quake hit at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers beneath the epicenter near Padang, West Sumatra, Indonesia, after midnight on Monday, May 3, 2021 at 12:46 a.m. local time. The monitoring service identified a second report from the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, which listed the quake at magnitude 5.6. A third agency, the German Research Center for Geosciences, reported the same quake at magnitude 5.5. Based on the preliminary seismic data, the quake should not have caused any significant damage, but was probably felt by many people as light vibration in the area of the epicenter. Weak shaking might have been felt in Padang, located 160 kilometers from the epicenter.
And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Crystal and I will be back.
This portion is brought to you by Security Bank.
Welcome back. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. said the mini rollout of the newly delivered COVID-19 vaccine Sputnik V from Russia will not only improve the government's vaccination program, it will also prepare implementing units on how to handle the jabs once more doses arrive next month. The 15,000 doses delivered by a Qatar Airways flight from Moscow via Doha on Saturday afternoon will be divided among Taguig, Manila, Parañaque, Muntinlupa, and Makati. The next batch of the 485,000 doses are expected within May. As this is the first tranche of the scheduled deliveries from Sputnik V, we are very excited to roll out the initial 15,000 first doses as we reassess our country's logistics capability to handle such highly sensitive vaccines with minus 18 degrees cold chain requirement, according to National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. in a statement. Galvez likewise thanked the Direct Investment Fund of Russia and Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Marat Pavlov, for personally delivering the first tranche of the vaccines produced by pharmaceutical company Gamaleya Research Institute. The government procured 10 million doses of Sputnik V, which Galvez said may possibly double.
Brunei has begun inoculating its senior citizens against COVID-19, the second group to receive the jab under Phase 1 of the national vaccination program that kicked off on April 3. According to a report from the Scoop, as of April 26, some 344 seniors have received their first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, with the second dose slated to be administered in July. The Health Ministry is pushing to vaccinate 38,000 senior citizens, while vaccination centers nationwide will continue to inoculate frontliners. Over the past few weeks, the ministry held town halls and meetings with seniors and grassroots leaders to encourage them to get vaccinated. Vietnam has detected 4 cases of COVID-19 variant believed to be behind a devastating surge of the virus in India, state media said on Thursday. Separately, the country also reported its first community outbreak in weeks on Thursday. Vietnam has so far kept case numbers low, reporting 2,910 of them and 35 deaths, thanks to mass quarantines and extensive contact tracing. All 4 of those infected with the B.1.617 variant of COVID-19, which was first found in India, had recently traveled from the South Asian country and were quarantined upon arrival in Vietnam. The genetic sequencing results of 4 out of 5 COVID-19 patients arriving from India show that the patients have been infected with the Indian strain of the virus, Laodong newspaper said Thursday. The results of a 5th person tested will be known on Friday. The discovery of the variant came as more than 1,000 people in a village in Hanam province close to Hanoi were put under lockdown Thursday. A man who returned home to the area from Japan tested positive for COVID-19 this week after a 14-day quarantine and gave the virus to his family, according to the Ministry of Health. Media reports said infections had also been found in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and northern Hung Yen province. The last community outbreak centered around the northern city of Haidong was successfully contained last month. But the country has been on high alert after a spiraling outbreak in parts of Southeast Asia, including Cambodia and Laos, which both share a border with Vietnam. Vietnam begins a 4-day public holiday on Friday, and holiday hotspots are expected to be packed.
A pair of social media influencers will be booted from Bali over a prank video that featured one sporting painted-on virus mask that broke COVID-19 rules. Authorities on the Indonesian resort island said that they would deport U.S.-based Taiwanese YouTuber Josh Paler-Lin and Russian influencer Leia Say over the stunt that went viral. In the video, Lin expresses surprise that few people seem to notice Say walking around a Bali supermarket with a painted-on blue mask. Now, she applied the makeup after store security initially turned away the maskless Russian. The clip sparked outrage in Bali, where virus cases and deaths have been climbing. Lin, 32, who regularly posts prank videos to his 3.4 million subscribers on YouTube, has already deleted the clip and apologized. Lin, 32, who regularly posts prank videos, he already deleted the clip and he apologized to his viewers. I made this video, he said, to entertain people because I'm a content creator and it is my job to entertain people, Lin said in an apology online. However, I did not realize that what I did could actually bring a lot of negative comments, he added. Foreigners can be hit with a fine of 1 million rupiah or $70 for not wearing a mask in Bali and face deportation for the second offense. Now, authorities decided to boot out the pair over their prank anyways. A Singapore hospital has locked down 4 wards after detecting coronavirus cases. According to authorities, a rare outbreak in a country that has largely brought the virus under control. Now, after a partial lockdown and rigorous regime of testing and contact tracing, COVID-19 had almost disappeared in Singapore, with authorities in recent months reporting had hardly any local transmission. But there were 16 infections on Thursday, the highest daily count since July last year, and another 9 on Friday. 13 are linked to Tan Tock Seng Hospital, where a Filipino nurse who had been fully vaccinated was the first to develop and report symptoms earlier this week. 4 wards of the hospital, one of Singapore's biggest, have been locked down with movements restricted and dedicated staff deployed to work there, said its chief executive Eugene So. The other locally transmitted cases have been linked to an immigration official working at the airport. The emergence of the new virus clusters is a worrying trend, according to Health Minister Gan Kim Yong. And he told this to reporters at a virtual press conference. There are also concerns a sustained rise in local infections could scupper a quarantine-free travel bubble between Singapore and Hong Kong, due to begin on May 26 after an earlier failed attempt.
More news about the dynamic ASEAN region after this short break.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups Micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the program. After supporting the Philippine government's program to fight coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19, the Asian Development Bank will focus its financing program in the country to accelerate job generation. During the Task Group on Economic Recovery, National Employment Recovery Strategy, Job Summit on Labor Day, ADB Philippines Country Director Kelly Bird said the institution has $3.5 billion lending program for the Philippines this year, mainly supporting infrastructure projects that will create construction and related jobs. Let's watch this.
Very impressive. Prior to the pandemic, the Philippines economy was enjoying its longest economic expansion ever, and with remarkable rates of job creation, especially since 2015-2016. Wage and salary employment in private establishments was growing above 5% annually, and unemployment at around 4.6% in October 2019 was a historical low. As we all know, so much has happened in the last 12 months. The COVID-19 pandemic has stretched health systems all over the world, and in 2020 brought the global economy into its deepest economic recession in more than 70 years. The Philippines was not unscathed from the global pandemic and socio-economic impacts. Importantly, though, the Philippines government has responded quickly to mitigate the worst effects of the pandemic on the socio-economic well-being of its citizens through a menu of programs covering health, social assistance to poor and middle-class families, and to businesses. The government has also implemented in the last 3 to 4 years a comprehensive set of major reforms, including the Build infrastructure program, tax reforms, regulatory reforms, rice sector reforms that places the Philippines in a very good position to return to its economic growth above 6%. While the unemployment numbers have shown good improvement since its surge in Q2 of last year, still 1.7 million wage and salary jobs in the private establishments have been lost in the 12 months up to January this year. And we have seen informal employment numbers swell as hundreds of thousands of displaced workers move to the informal sector. Unemployment remains elevated at around 8.8% of the labour force. All of us here today are concerned with the COVID-induced negative, longer-lasting impacts on the labour market that it may take time for wage and salary employment to recover, even as the economy recovers. This may arise because a slow recovery could lead to diminished productive capacity and lost jobs. Some sectors like tourism may take time to recover. Businesses may shift to digital technologies, reshaping work, and the pandemic may accelerate the shift to automation. Consequently, job seekers and unemployed workers may be able to work for longer periods and become less employable. I would like to just very briefly turn to our 2021 support to the Philippines' economic recovery and employment. Much of our $3.5 billion lending program this year will support infrastructure projects that will create tens of thousands of construction and related jobs in the Philippines. Our own estimates show that $1 billion of infrastructure investments create an additional $1.5 billion in gross domestic product. From ADB's Linden program for this year, it includes the Malolos Clark Railway project, which was approved in 2019, and with $2.4 billion of civil works contracts awarded last year, it will start civil works this year. It's a Greenways project approved last year will also start civil works soon. And we also have the South Commuter Railway project, the Davao Modern Bus project, Metro Manila Bridges project, and the Palawan Sustainable Tourism project, all for approval and contract awards this year. With the Department of Labour and Employment and TESTA, we are also preparing the Youth School to Work Transition Program this year that lays out programs to help at-risk youth find employment. This includes Dolly's flagship program, Job Start Philippines, that has helped more than 20,000 out-of-school young Filipinos find meaningful employment.
The Philippine government must accelerate its vaccine rollout and prioritize the inoculation of industry workers to revive the economy as soon as possible. These are among the recommendations of the business sector presented by Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, President Ambassador Benedicto Yoihico during the Task Group on Economic Recovery and the National Employment Recovery Strategy, or NERS Job Summit on Saturday. Ambassador Yoihico said the government must accelerate its immunization program against COVID-19 as he echoed the business community's appeal to allow the private sector to procure and distribute vaccines. He also said industry workers must be recognized as essential economic frontliners and be given exemptions or eased requirements in mobility restrictions. Ambassador Yoihico said there is also a need to improve community quarantine restrictions by ensuring that government planning and communications are deliberate, flexible, responsive, clear, and consistent without sporadic changes. Further mobility restrictions must be harmonized and eased. While the country continues to reel from the effects of the coronavirus crisis, Ambassador Yoihico said the private and public sectors must now work hand in hand for the new normal, including shifting to digital systems and addressing concerns on ease of doing business in the country.
2,000 overseas Filipino workers in 2 American military bases in Afghanistan will soon be rendered jobless as the U.S. and NATO alliances start withdrawing their military forces from Kabul. Filipinos' role in America's War of Enduring Freedom comes to an end as some 2,500 American troops leave Bagram and Kandahar in May 1. The phased pullout is expected to end in September 2021. That end coincides with the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks blamed on Islamic extremists led by Osama bin Laden, who had found sanctuary for years in Afghanistan. The U.S. and NATO forces have had a presence in Afghanistan for almost 20 years. At its peak, their joint presence numbered 120,000 troops. Recruitment consultant Manny Geslani says the alliance withdrawal signals the end of the OFW's presence inside the 2 military bases, where for almost 2 decades they were the highest paid group of Filipino migrant workers. Filipinos working inside U.S. bases in Afghanistan will be slowly returning to the Philippines, Geslani said, following the U.S. military's withdrawal. Geslani said the remaining Filipinos in Kandahar will leave this week as the base ends all military operations by May 1, 2021. In Bagram, many civilian contractors have also starting packing up, including the rest of the OFWs. A few hundred Filipinos will also lose their jobs within the NATO bases. As NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg said, the alliance had agreed to withdraw roughly 7,000 forces in Afghanistan, matching Biden's decision to begin a final pullout by the 1st of May.
In other news, Asian markets mostly fell Monday following a soft lead from Wall Street, hit by profit-taking and lingering inflation worries. With few catalysts to drive business in Japan and China on holiday for most of the week, traders were easing back from their recent buying frenzy, while there are also concerns the more than year-long rally may have gone a little too far. Investment giant Warren Buffett instilled some unease after saying at the weekend that he was in super high gear thanks to massive Fed Reserve and government support, but that it would fan inflation. In early Asian trade, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taipei were all down more than 1%, while there were also losses in Seoul, Jakarta, and Wellington, though Sydney and Manila edged up.
The vaccination of other essential workers under the A4 priority group got going on Saturday with the simultaneous vaccination of overseas workers and other non-medical frontliners, although the full rollout has no schedule yet. The city of Manila had vaccinated 705 overseas Filipino workers and other local workers at the Palacio de Manila in Malate as of 1 p.m. in time for International Labor Day. The official rollout for the A4 priority group or frontliners in essential sectors will begin once supplies come in. Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso thanked President Duterte, Department of Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello II, and Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez for choosing the city as one of the beneficiaries. Vaccinating workers, Dumagoso said, is vital in increasing consumer and worker confidence and productivity that would eventually help the economy start rolling. Aside from the vaccination activity, the city government also held the online job fair Manila Labor Day 2021.
In other news, a Myanmar swimmer has abandoned his dream of competing at the Tokyo Olympics in protest at the junta ruling in his homeland, saying that until this military government of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing is removed from power, he said, "I don't see myself competing under the Myanmar flag." Take a look.
Until this military government of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing is removed from power, I don't see myself competing under the Myanmar flag. We're not going to back down. The youth in Myanmar are not going to back down. And we're going to keep struggling until we have freedom, one way or the other.
All right. Thank you, Crystal, for keeping me company today. Stay safe always.
Likewise, Alma. Thank you. And that's the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I am Crystal Mapa from Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.